Alright, is everything ready? Those are turned off. Those are turned on. I think we're ready to go. So, without further ado, let's get into this mess. Because this is gonna be off the walls. Hello, Shadowcat back, and we are back to work. Let me get rid of this first. We are back to work on the Warhammer 40k module. Now, last week, we started the Eldar. We went through an overview of all the things that we have to cover, and I may as well bring that up right now while I'm thinking about it. Let's see. Tab. Here we go. So, we started work on this stuff. We're doing things a little bit out of order. I was talking about doing the Asuryani paths first, but we're not doing that first. We're going to work on the Wargear because I learned a few things and I wanted to start off with that this week because I got some things wrong last week. Again, I'm not as familiar with the Eldar as I am groups like the Mechanicus or the Tau, so I'm learning as I'm going here. So we're going to work on the Eldar technology so I can correct myself on those things. Plus, the Wargear is a little bit easier to work with, and I don't know what the Asuryani paths are going to entail. They could be like templates that I have to use, or rather templates I have to create, or they could be entirely flavor and fluff that I don't have to do anything with at all, and that will come down to just how you want to describe your character and character creation. So we're going to hold off on that one. We're going to work on their Wargear this week. So that's what we got right here. We got this started. We're going to have to first go through and make a list of all the Wargear they have. We'll have to look at the things that we actually have to build, because I took a brief look through their Wargear. There is definitely some stuff we're going to have to remake from scratch. And then there is some stuff that we don't have to do at all. For example, Eldar use laser and plasma weapons, which is great, because we don't have to do anything about that. We already have laser weapons. We already have plasma weapons. And so when it comes down to it, we'll take a look at what they've got anyway. And if we need to make something specific, like for the Tau, they have their long-distance pulse casters. It's pulse caster, I think it was. Anyway, they basically have plasma sniper rifles, which is something that Starfinder does not have. So we had to make that. But the rest of their weapons were simply covered under, regular plasma weapons. So we can skip that. Eldar have laser weapons. They are literally compared to last weapons used by the Imperium, just better. And when they say better, they don't mean that they necessarily do more damage, although they might do a little bit more. They just work better. So literally, an Eldar, I think they call it a prismatic weapon, is the same thing as a las gun, which is the same thing as just a laser gun in Starfinder. So we can save time on that one. So we're going to go through the Wargear. We'll determine what we need to do to actually, make these things work. And the first piece of Wargear that I want to start with before we go into the wiki is the Spirit Stone. Now, last time we discussed the Spirit Stones because when we come up here and we look at the Eldari as a race, I still do not have a number of racial points for their immortality, and I'm still not even sure how you quantify that, because that's significant. But we're already looking at the Eldari as being potentially a 2-level adjustment, maybe 3. That means that if I start everybody off at level 1, essentially the Eldari is starting off at like -2, because they're not actually going to get a profession. They're not going to get a class until they hit like level 3 or 4, depending on where that falls in. And the reason being is because they're just that strong. I mean, they are... their immortality is kind of hard to it's kind of hard to quantify because they're not actually immortal like, say, Deadpool, where Deadpool can be literally dismembered and he can still complain about the fact that he's been dismembered. That's not Eldar. When we say immortal, Eldar just simply don't die of old age. They do not grow infirm, they don't grow feeble or weak. They just live forever. They are the living bitch slap to Newton, okay? They are a moving force that continues to move. There is no such thing as friction for them. They just keep going and going and going. So, I mean, they've got that going for them. There's Psychers, which is going to be huge, but we don't have that yet. They're also really good when it comes to will saves. And then we get to the Infinity Cycle. If the Eldar possesses a Spirit Stone, save their character for future rebirth. We're going to have to adjust this because I looked up how Spirit Stones work. They don't work like that. So we're going to get into that first. But before we do that, let's take a look at the chat. Tux was in here before the stream even started and just said hi. Well, hi Tux, it's good to see you here. JP is here for the crazy, Blizz is here too. Hello to everybody who came today. It's good to see you all here. Now, let's get into where I screwed up, because we have to get into a little bit of the Eldar's history and how things work. So we're going to bring this in. And I may as well go back to that right here so we can go back and take a look. So here's the thing about the Spirit Stones. And actually, I'm not going to click off this. I know what I'm talking about now. Here's the thing about the Spirit Stones. So a long time ago, in the land of before time, which is where the Eldar lived, the Eldar were a very unified but very passionate race, which they continue to be today. The difference is that way back then, they were significantly less disciplined than they were today. By and large, they had a society much like our own, where you could indulge. I mean, we can indulge today. We can do things that feel good. We can eat food that tastes good. We can do all the things that we enjoy doing. The problem is, of course, when you do these things to excess, which they did. The fact is that being that they are such a passionate people, when they drove things to excess, they did that passionately too. And it continued to degenerate their society as their debauchery grew more and more unhinged, until eventually, because this is how the warp works, eventually all the energies from their combined desire for debauchery birthed the chaos god Slaanesh. Because, as I had to explain to somebody else before, even though Slaanesh is always depicted as this shapeful, sensual, sexual figure, Slaanesh is not the god of sex. Slaanesh is the god of excess. Slaanesh is the god of indulgence. Slaanesh doesn't care what you're doing, so long as you are doing it to excess. Slaanesh doesn't really care if you're having sex, so long as you are having sex with 50 people a day. Slaanesh doesn't care if you're doing drugs, unless you're doing all the drugs. Slaanesh doesn't care if you're breaking stuff, so long as until you're breaking like all the stuff. When it becomes a literal addiction for you, or something that you cannot stop yourself from doing, when it becomes a vice, that is when Slaanesh kicks in, because Slaanesh is about turning everything up to 15. Okay, Spinal Tap's dials went up to 11, Slaanesh's go up to infinity. That's Slaanesh, and that's what the Eldar were doing, is they were doing everything just to excess. And that's what created Slaanesh, and that's what caused the Great Schism. And Tux says, you are correct, but I'm keeping my horny Slaanesh headcanon and you can't stop me. I'm not going to stop you. Technically speaking, horny Slaanesh is still correct Slaanesh. Because Slaanesh is about doing everything to excess. Slaanesh doesn't care. As a matter of fact, if you do 2 things to excess, you have made Slaanesh twice as happy. Because Slaanesh gets to feed on all of that. Now, why do I have to go into this? Because this is the Great Schism between the Eldar and the Dark Eldar, the Eldari and the Drukhari. Now, last time I said that the Drukhari were basically sadistic monsters because they were doing that to basically please Slaanesh. I was wrong about that. See, I was under the impression that the Drukhari were serving Slaanesh because they wanted to. I was wrong. I could not have been more wrong about that. The fact is that the Drukhari are basically crack addicts. They no longer know how to function in what we would call a more reasonable method, okay? They don't know how to live a normal life anymore, the same way that a crack addict does not know how to get out of bed without first taking a hit, okay? They don't know how to live any other way anymore. But Slaanesh wants to consume Eldar souls, okay? Like almost exclusively, but Slaanesh will take whatever it can get. This also includes Drukhari souls. Slaanesh wants to eat every single Eldar. And every single Dark Eldar. Slaanesh really does not care. And so every single act of debauchery, every single act of torture, every single gross and vile, butcherous thing that the Drukhari do is basically like living inside a cage with a tiger. And every so often, you gotta feed that tiger, okay? But here's the thing. The people outside the cage, they aren't feeding the tiger. They're feeding you. And so every so often, you have to give your food to the tiger and hope that the tiger doesn't eat you today. So every time the Drukhari are going out raiding, it's so they can bring back human sacrifices or Tau that they can reconfigure into living furniture. They can rape, they can murder, they can vivisect, they can flay, because all of this is feeding Slaanesh and hopefully keeping Slaanesh from looking too hard at any one Drukhari, because Slaanesh is basically the eye of Sauron, and if Slaanesh looks at you too long and too hard, your soul is gone. So the Drukhari are actually kind of tragic. That being said, though, I'm still not going to allow them as like a playable race, because they are absolutely omnicidal. But I was wrong about that, and I had to correct that. Speaking of other things that I was wrong about, I was talking about the Eldar and how they use those spirit stones to capture their souls so that when they die and their psychic essence is free from their body and brushes against the immaterium, they capture that psychic essence, essentially their soul, so that Slaanesh cannot snatch it up. And I said that it then goes into a stone, which then goes into the Infinity Circuit until they're born again. That is wrong. That is so wrong. Honestly, this stream should just be shut down by somebody who knows more than me. Like, somebody call Luton. Somebody call Luton. Okay, I screwed up. I screwed up bad. He needs to slap me. But I did my research, and I did find out exactly how this works. So, as we established last time, when we were talking about the craft worlds and the infinity circuits are used to power their craft worlds. And every time an Eldar dies, their spirit stone is put into the infinity circuits, and they help to power the craft worlds, because psychic energy is energy. And so a stone filled with psychic energy is basically a battery. But they are not waiting there until they're reborn. Not as such, anyway. So, what I was able to decipher from reading the wiki is that the Eldar, or rather the Eldari, have a plan. It's kind of a Hail Mary plan, but they have a plan. That is, they already know that when you do something to a certain degree, your will can manifest in the warp and create a chaos god. After all, it was the Eldar who created Slaanesh. And the Eldar are currently figuring, if we can do it once, we can do it again, right? And so this is the Hail Mary plan by the Eldar. They want to create another god. Now, I know it at first glance, you're just like, that's insane. But as I had to explain earlier this week, the gods are not necessarily evil. I gotta choose my words here really, really carefully, because they are not evil. They're not good either. But all the chaos gods have a dark side and a light side to them. Now, generally speaking, when it comes to the chaos gods, we always focus on the dark side, because the dark side is absolutely, the thing to worry about. You do not want to get on a chaos god or any of their followers' bad side, because they will do bad things to you. Khorne is the god of fire and war. Nurgle is the god of plague and disease. Tzeentch is the god of treachery and deceit. And Slaanesh is the god of excess. And usually that means like excessive consumption, excessive debauchery, things like that. But as I've explained, and I bring up Luton because he did a fantastic video on this as to, I think the video was, why would anybody follow the Chaos Gods? And he gave some really good examples, and I'm going to try to quote some of them here. It's been a while since I've seen it, though. But Khorne is the god of violence and death. However, he also does not really care in what way that violence and death is spread. And so Khorne is actually a very honorable god, sometimes, because Khorne is just as likely to reward somebody for challenging someone to single combat to the death as Khorne is to bless somebody who is a mass murderer. Khorne is the patron saint of all barbarians, butchers, and serial killers. Khorne is also the patron saint for knights and for mercenaries, for soldiers. I mean, anybody whose business is death, Khorne is there for them. And if they are an honorable force, Khorne will bless them as equally as Khorne will bless anyone else. Khorne doesn't care how you spill the blood so long as the blood is spilled. And so if you are spilling blood in a holy crusade, Khorne is happy. I mean, I can only imagine that Khorne loves Space Marines, because that is all Space Marines do. Does Khorne have any influence over the Space Marines? In general, no. I mean, I couldn't tell you what chapter it is, but I know there is a Chaos Space Marine chapter just for Khorne's Space Marines. But in general, like I said, Khorne doesn't care who's doing it. So that platoon that just had drop pods land on the planet to fight back the Tyranid, Khorne's happy. Although the pointy Tyranid skulls make his throne really uncomfortable. So, maybe less Tyranids next time. Nurgle is the god of disease and pestilence. However, Nurgle is also the god of change. For people who really feel like they are just stuck in their life and there's no way out, I mean, I have to go back and quote the movie Dragonheart, which if you've never seen it, go watch it. Good movie. But in there, one of the lines that has stuck with me forever, and this is a minor spoiler, so if you are just like deathly allergic to spoilers, plug your ears. But there is a scene where the king is going through the village, and the village is mining stone for his castle, and he has enslaved the entire population to build his castle. He doesn't care who you are. Man, woman, adult, child, young, old, everybody has been enslaved to build the castle. One of the main characters, her father, is working in the quarry. He's blind. And so he is doing his best to haul stone, and he's doing it without being able to see. He stumbles just as the king is walking by. It's very convenient. And his daughter pleads to the king, "Please, let my father go. Your castle is almost done. He's old. He's blind. Please, release him." And so, the king pulls out has his bow already. He pulls out an arrow, nocks it, draws, looses the arrow right into this guy's heart, and kills him on the spot. To which he tells her, and this is going to be ironic words that will come up later in the movie, "I've always thought that death should be a release, not a punishment." And those words have actually stuck with me my entire life. I do mean that because I saw the movie when I was less than 10 years old, and those words resonated with me. There are things in life that are infinitely worse than death. And this is where Nurgle comes in. Because while Nurgle is pestilence and plague for all normal people, Nurgle is also change. It is guaranteed that whatever disease ravages the land, things will change afterwards. After so many people are dead, after maybe the rulers over you have keeled over due to plague, after the famine of pestilence, after whatever it is happens, things are going to change. Or perhaps you have been suffering for so long, and Nurgle blesses you with this incurable disease. Now, instead of suffering for who knows however many years, you are going to die. And depending on what it is, maybe you will die in less pain than you were currently suffering. Nurgle is change. Now, is it change for the better or change for the worse? That depends on how you come out at the end. Because a plague, a famine, a pestilence, whatever it happens to be, is going to be bad, yes. But it may be a case of it's going to be darkest before the dawn. Maybe you are going to be one of the bold survivors who comes out, and while you struggle for a few years rebuilding, your life is better afterwards. This brings me to Tzeentch, my personal favorite of the Chaos Gods. Tzeentch is regarded as the god of treachery and betrayal, to the point where it's actually a meme, where they say, hey, if you were to pit all of the Chaos Gods against each other, who would win? Well, nobody actually knows who would win. Everybody just agrees who would lose. And who would lose is Tzeentch. Because Tzeentch, being the god of treachery and betrayal, would have the absolute perfect winning strategy in every single matchup. And Tzeentch would sabotage itself every single time. Because that's what Tzeentch does. Tzeentch will always put a stick in its own front wheel every single time. That's what Tzeentch does. It doesn't matter what your scheme is, what your plan is, you will ultimately be your own undoing. And so where is the good side for Tzeentch? Well, Tzeentch is the god of ambition. Tzeentch is the god of desire and drive. For all those people who say, I want to be the best, Tzeentch is your god. Okay? Tzeentch is the one that will push you to learn more, to do more, to refine your skills, to do everything. You want to be a politician? Tzeentch will push you to be the best public speaker you can be, to learn everything there is about public speaking, about how to dress yourself, how to make your face appear, to make your tone and the way you accentuate your voice, the words you choose. Tzeentch will turn you into the perfect speaker. The only problem is, with Tzeentch, there is no upper limit. And so just like the most complicated device in the world is easy to gum up, well, Tzeentch will have you continuing to add gears and cogs until eventually something jams. Because Tzeentch can't stop. Tzeentch is ambition unbridled. Which means that Tzeentch and Slaanesh actually do have that in common. Both of them lead to excess. The only thing is that Slaanesh doesn't actually care that you're getting better. Slaanesh would not care if you did literally all the drugs and overdose. The important part is that you did all of them. So where does the Eldar plan come into this? The Eldar firmly believe that if they can gather enough people, and that includes the souls that are stuck in the Infinity Circuit, but if they can gather enough people in one place, in common purpose, that they can will into existence a brand new Chaos God, one who exemplifies all of their values. We're talking about vigilance, valiance, honor, dedication, will. That they can will into existence a god who is basically the exact opposite of Slaanesh, and they can use their new paragon in the Immaterium to slay Slaanesh. And once Slaanesh is gone, there is nothing left to hunt Eldar souls. And once their souls are no longer being consumed, that'll lead into another golden age for the Eldar. So that's their plan. Is it a good plan? I'm not sure. It's like I said, it's a Hail Mary. It's a long shot, okay? They're on the 70-yard line and they're punting. Who knows if it's going to work? But that's what they're going to do anyway, and that's what the Spirit Stones are for. If they're going to bring this new god into existence, they cannot lose any Eldar. However, Eldar are still going to die. So, you use the Spirit Stone, you capture the psychic essence because it's basically just a psychic sponge. You capture their psychic essence upon death, you can insert it into the you can insert it into the infinity circuit, and now they're preserved forever. They help to power the craft world, so they're still serving their people. And we can then pull some of those infinity some of those infinity stones, some of those spirit stones out of the infinity circuit. I'm getting my Warhammer, my Marvel confused now. But you can pull those stones out and you can use them for things which we're going to get into today. Now, apparently they don't like to do that, and apparently when I thought that the Eldar had mechs, they don't have mechs. Okay? Not like the Tau. The Tau, they can have a battle suit, and you're a fire cast. You climb up in there, you sit down, you strap in, you put on whatever you need to put on, you close the hatch, you lock the canopy, and you turn it on, you get up and you go. That's not how the Eldar do. For the Eldar, they literally have these Wraithbone mechs, and the reason they are built to move so lifelike is because they basically kinda are alive. What they do is there's no pilot in there. They plug a spirit stone into it, and that spirit gets to fill that body. And so essentially your character is then reborn as a Wraithbone whatever. We'll get to the different kinds later on. So they don't really have mechs. Vehicles, I'm not sure on. I know that all of their walking mechs are powered by spirit stones. Things like their tanks and their planes, I don't know, because they do look very similar. They might be powered, or rather driven by spirit stones. We'll have to wait and see. So, that is basically everything that I got wrong last time and the corrections that I needed to make. For today, we're going to do their Wargear, and we're not going to get to their Wraithbone stuff. I know that much, for certain. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at what they've got, and where the Tau basically don't have any melee options, the Eldar love their melee, like, to a disturbing degree. The Eldar are like the last ones that you want to meet in a dark alley, and they only get worse from there. For example, there's a lot of stuff in here that is just really very nasty, and then you get to people like the Harlequins, and their tools are even worse. Like, it's to the point where I looked at some of the weapons in here, and I said, I don't see the difference between the Eldar and the Drukhari except for what they do with the corpse afterwards. Like, the only difference here is that the Drukhari desecrate their corpse after they're done with it. The Eldar just kind of leave it there. As for what they do to people, though, nah, it's pretty much the same. Which I guess makes sense. They're both Eldar. Just wow, though. So let's start going through these and see what we can put together. Alright, so we're going to scroll down here a little bit so that we can get started on this. First things first. We're going to do the melee weapons because they came up at top. The first is the Biting Blade. So Biting Blades are only available to Exarchs of the Striking Scorpion aspect. Again, don't really care about this, I'm just designing the weapon. Who gets the weapon afterwards, we can handle that later. So they are large, two-handed chainswords, similar to the Eviscerator chainswords used by some soldiers of the Imperium, and are capable of cutting through flesh and armor with ease. Each hit scored by the Biting Blade increases the strength of the weapon. Okay. it's time. It's time to do chain swords. Did we already do chain swords? I don't remember. Let's go back. So, let's see. This was the general overview. This is our brief little sheet on the Imperium, because the Imperium are just humans. Then we've got the Astartes. Okay. So, again, these are the guys that came with the plus 20 level adjustment. They do not get to level up, really. We did establish how much a chainsword weighs, but we never actually made a chainsword. Today that changes. Alright then, biting blades. So for a biting blade, first thing I'm going to need is I need to have the template. And the only thing over here that was melee, I don't know if it actually matters, but the equalizer was a melee weapon. And yeah, it looks basically the same as anything else. It's fine. So we're going to, actually I just need the headers. So copy and paste. Okay. So, biting blades. No, I better leave that small, because then you can get a better look at it. So there's a biting blade. It is basically just a chain sword. It's just a little bit fancier. Because if you're going to do something for the Eldar, it better be fancy. So essentially, we are looking at a chainsaw, except it's been weaponized. Unfortunately, I don't think that Starfinder has damage properties for a chainsaw. And the real question is, what are we going to do with this thing? How are we going to arrange the levels of it? I'm not even sure. But biting blade. We probably want to have 4 levels of this. So biting blade tooth? Biting blade... let's see. Mandible. Biting blade jaw. And biting blade... what's a good 4th? I'm not sure what's a good 4th. I was going to put mouth on there. That works. Okay. Levels, we'll work that out later. Price later. The rest of these, however, range. The range is negligible because these are melee weapons. The critical... This is going to get ugly. Starting off, let's take a look at weapons and see if we can find anything that we can compare this thing to. Like anything at all. And I do mean literally anything. I will take whatever. So, analog weapons just mean they don't use power. Operative. What does an operative mean? So an operative can use the trick attack class feature with this weapon that has a special property. Okay, so that is specific to their profession. Can't use that. Powered, dueling sword buzzblade. Now hold on a second. What does that mean? So, dueling sword, buzzblade, molecular, ripper, tactical, or ultra thin. So, while dueling swords are crafted to be aesthetically pleasing and are often seen as a mark of rank or tradition, many warriors still train with them to deadly effect. The power blades of both the buzzblade and ripper dueling swords brings danger to the modern era, while the molecular ripped sword, though unpowered, uses a field of disrupted molecules along its blade to slice through nearly anything and must be stored in a magnetic sheath that never actually touches the blade. That is beyond useless, but still cool to know. So that is a powered weapon. Let's see, molecular weapons, gravity gloves, syringes. Nothing there that we can use. Alright. Here's a buzzblade spear. What else do we got? Syringe spears. Alright, we're getting into advanced weapons. These are doing energy damage. Yeah, these all do energy damage. Or no, wait, the uncategorized ones. These are doing regular damage. What do we got here? Curve blades, reach, unwieldy. And the staff repeller, it's got a block, stun. Okay. I think it's pretty accurate to say there is absolutely nothing like this in Starfinder. So we're going to have to do this one from the ground up. So the first thing that we have to do is we have to establish, what does a chain sword do? And I know that sounds like a dumb question, but we have to really identify from a mechanical standpoint, what does it do? Is this a multi-attack weapon? Is this like a heavily crit-focused weapon? How are we going to do this? So, I mean, the first thing that it said, let's go back to our description here. Let's go back to our description here. So, it says, wielded properly, the razor-sharp teeth can tear through flesh and bone with horrific speed, and a skilled warrior can cleave a man in two without difficulty. These deadly weapons are wielded exclusively by exarchs and the striking scorpions aspect shrine. Okay, don't really care about that. I thought it said something about armor. Are you going to jump on me? I guess you're not. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, it says right here, cutting through flesh and armor with ease. I'm considering something, and I don't like the fact that I'm considering it. I really do not like the fact that I'm considering this. And I'm really telling myself, stop. Stop, don't do this. You're still doing this. Stop doing this. You're going to regret this. You are going to regret this so hard. No, don't do it. But I'm doing it. I'm still here. I'm still scrolling. And it's only so long until I find it. Hi, Jeffrey! You're just in time to watch me make the biggest mistake that I've made this entire time. So, if you've ever played Dungeons & Dragons before, if you've ever been a fan or a follower of the Forgotten Realms, if you've ever done anything fantasy at all, you may have heard of the legendary Vorpal weapon. It is a thing of wonder and awe in literally every single Dungeons & Dragons setting, and for that matter, Pathfinder as well. The reason being that everybody who is anybody desperately wants a Vorpal weapon, and the people who don't want a Vorpal weapon simply have not been introduced to what a Vorpal weapon is. This is a Vorpal weapon. This potent and feared ability allows the weapon to sever the heads of those it strikes. Upon the roll of a natural 20. Now this is a point of contention, because if I just hover over this, it literally says natural 20. Okay? Natural 1, natural 20. So a natural 20 is always a hit. A natural 20 is also a critical threat, a possible critical hit. Okay? Now it says that, but one of the things it does not take into consideration is expanded critical. Because rapiers and other weapons, but primarily rapiers, by default, come with an 18 to 20 critical threat. They have a 15% chance of critically hitting every single time you attack. If you level up and take improved critical, which doubles the critical range on your weapon, it means that for a longsword, you just went from a 5% to a 10% crit rate. For a rapier, you just went from a 15% crit to a 30% crit. We're talking 16 and up. Having Vorpal on a rapier, depending on the interpretation, is one of the most grossly overpowered weapons in the game. That being said, if we are to read this rules as written, that means that even if you had expanded critical, you could score a critical hit without activating the Vorpal aspect. So it's something that we'll have to make a decision on, and I am inclined, given the sheer power of it, to take this rules as written. Which means that even with an expanded critical, you can crit without necessarily making it Vorpal. Anyway though, reading. Upon a roll of a natural 20 followed by a successful roll to confirm the critical hit, this weapon severs the opponent's head if it has one from its body. Some creatures, such as aberrations and all oozes, have no heads, which they are also, by extension, immune to critical hits anyway. Others, such as golems and undead creatures other than vampires, are not affected by the loss of their heads. They are also immune to critical hits in general. Most other creatures, however, die when their heads are cut off. A Vorpal weapon must be a slashing melee weapon. Which I guess means you couldn't put it on a rapier, because that's piercing. If you roll this special ability randomly for an inappropriate weapon, re-roll. What I see happening here is under this biting blade, it literally says, it can tear through flesh and bone with horrific speed, and a skilled warrior can cleave a man in two without difficulty. If there is anything in the game that could suggest Vorpal more than a chainsword. I don't know what it is. And I have to say this now, not having looked at power swords, I'm not sure how power swords are going to work. Just because I don't necessarily know how they work as it is. But I think if anything is going to be Vorpal, it's got to be this. And so I think that's what I'm going to do. JP just says, Vorpal sword! Yes, everyone wants the Vorpal sword. Tuck says a 5% chance to instant kill in and of itself is OP. Yes! Which is why why Vorpal swords have been sought after ever since the idea, the concept, was introduced. I mean, everybody wants to have a Vorpal sword. Here's the thing, though. Just slight deviation. Very slight, because we're not going to linger on this. To get a Vorpal sword, let's say that you have a long sword and you want to make it a Vorpal long sword. A long sword on its own is not terribly expensive. It's a few gold, I think. I don't know. I'm not going to look up how much a long sword costs. Just know it's not that expensive. To make a magic weapon, it has to be a masterwork. And masterwork is, by default and always... I mean, unless I guess the DM says otherwise. An extra 300 gold. Now, gold is a lot. So, 300 gold to masterwork your sword is already a pretty steep ask. But Vorpal is a +5 bonus on your weapon. If we scroll up here... let's see, that's randomly generating weapons. Where does it tell me how much a +1 costs? Actually, no, might not be in magic weapons. It might be magic items. Is it in here? No, it's not in here. I know I've seen it. How much does it cost? Oh, here we go. Base weapon pricing. So a +5 weapon bonus, which is what you need in your weapon before it can be enchanted to this skill, is an additional 50,000 gold pieces. Let me put this in context for you, okay? Equipment, here we go. Equipment. I want... not adventuring gear. Furniture, trade goods, vehicles? Okay, vehicles. For 80,000 gold pieces, you could get a Steam Giant. This thankfully rare and expensive walking monstrosity is one of the most bizarre land vehicles in existence. A giant cauldron of iron atop stubby but effective legs, it hobbles its way across the battlefield at a grinding pace. Basically, it is a walking tank that is armored and basically indestructible. I think, at least. I wonder if we got stats on it. Let me see if we got stats on it, just so I can show you exactly what this thing is. Let's see. Steam Giant. No, I can't find any stats on it. Oh no, wait, I did find it. Hold on. Hold on just a second, I found it. Had to go to the archive of Nephis, but you know what, that's what it's for. It's for all the things that I'm missing. I love the Archive of Nethys. Alright, here we go. Vehicles, Steam Giant. So it's got an armor class of 6, but a hardness of 10. So you got to do 10 damage to it before you can do 1 damage to it. 320 hit points. It's got a base save of 3. Here we go. Maximum speed is 60 feet. It's got an acceleration of 30 feet. It does 48 ramming damage. Sure. Here we go. Creatures inside of the Steam Giant gain either total cover in the lower decks or improved cover in the upper viewing and control deck. Only the upper deck has viewports allowing those inside the steam engine to look out. It's got alchemical propulsion. Don't care, don't care, don't care. It's got crew capacity for 4. It can carry 6 passengers. It's got 3 decks. And it's got 2 large direct fire ranged siege engines on its arms. Okay? This is a Steam Giant. It is just like impossibly expensive to find one, and even if you did have the money, probably impossible to find as well. And the Vorpal sword costs more than half of what this thing does. Everybody wants to have a Vorpal sword. Nobody can really afford one. Which means that they're going to be really interesting in 40k, because in 40k, chainswords are not exactly rare. Like, chainswords are kind of the go-to weapon for Astartes right after their bolter. And it's not even that uncommon to see chainswords in the Imperial Guard, since they tend to be a favored weapon by commissars. That could lead to some very, very unbalanced situations. So I'm not sure what we're going to make of this. But I'm going to do it anyway. Biting Blade is going to be Vorpal. The damage. So when it comes to the damage of these things, do we have an example of a level 20... Oh, and Tux says, just make it do massive damage with a chance of damaging yourself on a 1. Oh, Tux. Oh, I can do even better than that. Okay. Let me tell you how I do critical misses. So, on a critical hit, I will treat a critical hit the same way most people treat any other critical hits. The only difference is that I use the instant kill rule. So, if you roll a critical threat, okay, you rolled like a natural 20. That's a critical threat. If you roll another hit and you actually hit them, that's a critical hit. I use the instant death rule, where if you roll a second critical hit on your critical confirmation, it is now a lethal threat. If you roll again and you have a successful hit on your lethal confirmation, it is an instant kill. No matter what it is. No matter what condition it's in. There would have to be extenuating circumstances for it not to just be dead. Now, that being said, if you are attacking and you have a critical miss, the first thing that you do is miss your target. The second thing that I do is I ascertain what are you threatening. And this can come in a variety of ways. For example, if it is a melee weapon, I will have you make a roll, 1d8, for one of the 8 squares surrounding you to see which square you are actually threatening. And then I will have you make an attack roll to see if you hit whatever's in that square. Which means that if you are standing side by side with one of your teammates, you run the risk of hitting them. Then again, if you and your teammate are both melee attacking the same target, well, your target is actually one of those 8 squares, which means that you could actually fumble successfully. So if by just random chance you happen to accidentally attack the same square you were trying to attack, and then confirm your strike, you can totally screw up and then succeed. If it's a ranged weapon, it depends on what kind of ranged weapon and what's in the way, because I will then usually treat it as a cone attack and randomly determine inside that cone what you're actually going to hit, which could be your target, it could be a teammate, it could be an NPC. I don't know. And then, of course, you roll an attack roll and see if you hit whatever it is that you weren't trying to hit. I don't usually do the whole attacking yourself thing, because it never usually works out that well. However, generally speaking, what I will say is, usually what I will do is, if you rolled critical or 2 critical failures in a row, like if you are actually unlucky enough that you rolled 2 1s in a row, if you're using like a melee weapon, I usually have you throw your melee weapon. So you've got a sword, you went to swing, you rolled a 1. It's like, okay, roll 1d8 to see where you're threatening, and make another attack roll. You rolled a 1 again? So not only did your swing go completely wild and you missed your target entirely, at the apex of your swing, your sword slips out of your fingers and goes flying. Make a strength check. Oh, you rolled a 17 on your strength check. Let's see, 17... Let's see, 17 squares. This may be unrealistic, but let's see, 17 squares times 5 feet in a square. You threw your sword 85 feet away, that way. Go get it. Keep in mind that your move speed is probably 30, which means that even if you were, well, you would have to literally run to go get your sword. In the case of a ranged weapon, if it's like a bow, maybe your bow comes unstrung. If it's like a firearm, which is mostly what we'll be doing, maybe your firearm literally becomes broken. Let's see. Jeffrey says, you need to catch somebody alive, lands attack and a killing blow. I said alive. I've literally had that happen in my games. And it wasn't an accident either. They just said, hey, these guys are threatening to blow up the town if they don't get this person we're protecting. I'm just going to kill the person we're protecting, then he won't blow up the town. And the rest of the party was like, no! He actually got kicked out of the group. Because they're like, no, we're not dealing with you, you're crazy. JP says, double crit fail used to be a glorious accidental suicide of my first DM. I'm not gonna do that. People like their characters. I would never, okay, I can't say that I would never intentionally kill your character, but I would never do it in that way. Like, I have killed people's characters because they did something incredibly stupid, but if I'm killing your character, it's your fault. And I want you to understand that it's your fault if I kill your character. Okay, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to tell you, these are the things that you did that you could have undone. Because I do not want you to make the same mistake twice. In the case of one player, they literally walked into a trap. The trap in the room was the pathway splits around a center column, and there's tiles on the floor. There's potions that you have to drink. Okay? Here's the thing. When you drink the potion, there are hidden runes on the floor. Numbers. And one side has the even numbers, one side has the odd numbers. And you just have to step across them in order. But you have to do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Otherwise, the roof comes down and crushes you. So you have to drink a potion. If you drink both potions, it poisons you, which one person found out the hard way. Because they drank one potion, they said, or I told them, it's like, you look over to the left and you can see numbers on the floor. Okay, what happens when I look right? You see nothing on the floor. It's like, okay, I drink the other potion. It's like, great. Make a fortitude save versus poison. As if the whole two pathways didn't make it obvious you needed to use teamwork here. But I had one person because after you drink the potions, it takes a long rest to refill them. But one person just said, you know what? I'm going to run it. And so I said, all right, where does your first step go? And they took a first step, and I said, you take one step and the roof over your head goes click. What do you do? And I'm secretly behind the screen going, please, just back away. Just stop now. You can't see where you're going. The roof overhead just went click. Please, don't do this. And they're just like, I keep running. I move to this square next, and I said, the roof comes down and crushes you. There is no save. And they're just like, wait, that's it? I'm dead? I'm like, yes, you're dead. What did you think was going to happen? As if the giant click overhead was not, warning enough. And I'm just like, next time, don't run in. Okay, this is a puzzle. Figure it out. That's the end of the session for today. I'll help you roll up a new character. Let's see. JP says, only instance I saw of it was a drowned fumbling... Oh, drow fumbling, pulling his dual scimitars, then tripped in a root, scissoring his own head off. That is like... That's a little bit too far-fetched even for me. I mean, it's funny. Don't get me wrong, it's funny. But I think it stretches credulity. Alright, let's get back to this then. So yeah, I mean, when it comes to traps or killing characters, I'm not going to save your character if your character absolutely deserves to die. But in general, I try really hard not to do it. Nobody wants a dead character. I want the story to keep going. I will kill characters, but I won't do it willy-nilly. Besides, it's more work for me then. Alright, so... uncategorized advanced weapons. So here we've got this curve blade. This is a powered weapon. It has additional bleeding on crit. And it does 12d10 slashing damage. I think this is the best we're going to get. And that is nicely divisible by 4. So I think that we can do this. I think we take the lowest level 1, and we can make this a 3d10. It was d10s, right? Yeah. 3d10 slashing damage. Then a 6d10 slashing, a 9d10 slashing, and then a 12d10 slashing. Now, on a critical. This is a curved blade, and I do wonder, where's the lowest curved blade? Here we go. So the curved blade goes from a 1d10 at level 4 with additional bleeding. We can definitely do this. So critical. And I'm going to do this for a reason. So critical, I'm going to make 1d6 bleeding, and we're just going to go up. So 2d6 bleeding, and then we'll say 4d6 bleeding, and 66 bleeding. Now, the capacity on a chain sword, I'm going to go ahead and say is going to be 40 charges because it is powered. And the usage is 1. No, just 1. Oh, it did the same thing over here. Fine. Have it your way. There. Now, as for bulk, we established over here that a chain sword is about 4 bulk. However, the Eldar stuff is a lot sleeker, it's a lot slimmer. So I'm going to say it's going to be 2 bulk. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that. It's going to be 3 bulk. The reason it's going to be 3 is because not only is it, more finesse weapon than it is anything that the Imperium put together, but the Eldar are also stronger than humans. So even if it's just a little bit lighter, them being stronger also makes up the difference. And this is going to be powered and Vorpal. And this is... I don't actually need to have this here, but this is going to be a 2-handed chain sword. And I have to specify that because there are one-handed swords that we're going to get to. So, nope, not that one. So there's our biting blade, and it took a long time to get through just one biting blade. However, things will get faster here because the next up is a chain saber. These are available only to Exarchs of the Striking Scorpion. They are paired chain swords incorporating twin-linked shuriken pistols. Okay, never mind. It's not as easy as I thought it would be. Okay, so twin chain blades are mounted in ancient gauntlets that incorporate a shuriken pistol, meaning the user can let loose a short-range fusillade as he leaps into the fray before delivering a lightning flurry of blows. These brutally effective weapons are only available... Yes. Okay. It says chain sabers are twinned chain blades mounted in ancient gauntlets. What happens if we click this? Oh, that just brings us back to chain weapons in general. Imperial chain weapons, Chaos chain weapons. There's an Eldar chain sword. And this thing says it's chain blades mounted in ancient gauntlets. It doesn't actually tell us how big they are. It says twinned chain blades. Are we talking like... It says when they're mounted in gauntlets. So are we talking like Assassin's Creed here, where you can literally strap the weapon to your forearm? I wonder. Let's see. Let me pull this up. Let's see if we can actually find the models and see what they look like. So 40k Xenos armies, Eldari. Now it says here that these are striking scorpions aspect warriors. Is that a thing that I'm going to find here? So, Rangers, Combat Patrol, Eldari, Storm Guardians, Dark Reapers, Guardian Defenders, Warlocks, Howling Banshees, Dire Avengers, Wraith Blades, Wraith Guards, Harlequin Troops, let's see, a Solitaire, Death Jester. I'm not seeing them. Warp Spiders, Swooping Hawks, Shadow Specters, Aspect Warrior Squad. That's closer. Not what we're looking for, but it's closer. Unfortunately, though, I don't see anything that says Scorpion. Except for that thing. Yeah, I don't see anything that says Scorpion on it. However, we're not completely sunk here. Let's take a look at this combat patrol. Maybe we'll get something out of it, because there's a lot of guys here. Although they mostly have firearms. Okay, maybe not them. These guys have swords, though. Okay, let's see what this kit comes with. Alright, so bases... hold on. This comes with a variety of Eldari close combat weapon flamers and fusion guns, as well as heads and... Huh. I don't know. I mean, those don't... Okay, that's definitely a chain sword right there. That's a chain sword, that's a chain sword. These are not chain swords, though. Those are flamers, which we already have stats for flamethrowers, so we won't have to do those. Can we get other squads? Guardian Defenders, they have firearms. Howling Banshees. God, I don't know. Does anybody in the chat have any idea how big these blades are and whether these are like forearm gauntlets? Because I have really no idea here. And it does kind of make a difference. Yeah, I have no idea here. Okay, Tuck says, I suspect massive. I suspect not, because we already know they're one-handed. Let me do a quick Google search here. Not on the stream, just in case something weird comes up. Let me see. So 40K, and this is a chain saber. All right, here's something. All right, I got a picture of it. This is off of the 40K Lexicanum, which we're on 40k.fandom. So this is a different one. However, the chain sabers they're showing, it looks like the actual sabers are just that. They are single-handed chain swords. When it says that they're incorporated, it looks like the shuriken pistols are strapped to their wrist. So they're actually two separate weapons. And I do mean they're separate in every single way. They're just used in tandem. So we're not even talking like a kunai in chain or a kama in chain, where you have this weight and this either stabbing kunai or a hooking kama, and there's a chain between them. There's nothing combining these things. They're just used together like a sword and a shield. Which puts me in a really awkward position. Do I actually do this? Because is a chainsword down here? No, I don't think it is. So dire sword, no, chain saber. Okay. Here's what I think we're going to do. Because if we go down here to ranged weapons, we've got shuriken weapons, and that gives us shuriken pistols. Here's what I'm going to do. We're not going to do the chain sabers as written. We're going to do chain sabers down here as just the swords. And what I will do with the pistols is I will write in rules that allow the pistols to be either handheld or that the pistols can be mounted into gauntlets. And so if you wanted to pair them, I can maybe give a bonus for pairing them. I'm not sure how it's going to work yet, but I'll put it in here. So we're going to put in here chain saber. And this is going to be a one-handed chain sword. But it's also going to be a paired weapon. And that's how we'll deal with this. That'll be interesting, because I don't think we've done anything like this before. And I'm not feeling very creative right now, so I'm just going to say chain saber 1. And then hopefully I can just drag that down. Okay, if anybody has a creative name for all the chain sabers, I'm listening, but I'm not going to do this right now. Now, damage. So when we were looking at these weapons, we used the curve blade because that was a two-handed weapon. This is going to be a slashing weapon, so we're going to use this this long sword here. And it does D8s, and a lot of them. So I'm going to say it does the same thing, but it's going to do it in D8s. So it's going to be 3d8 slashing, 68 slashing, 98 slashing, and 12d8 slashing. The range, as before. The critical. So we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to do D4s. So it's going to be 1d4 bleeding, 2d4 bleeding, 4d4 bleeding, and 6d4 bleeding. And everything over here can also copy as well. So there we go. That takes care of the chain saber. Super simple. We're just going to figure out how it being paired with the shuriken pistol improves them. There's got to be either an increase in damage when they're put together, or a decrease in actions when they're put together. I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see. Okay, next, because we are running out of time today. Next is the Dire Sword. Next is the Dire Sword. So what is a Dire Sword? Let me go ahead and copy this down first. So Dire Swords are available only to Exarchs of the Dire Avenger aspect. They are one-handed power swords incorporating an Eldar Spirit Stone. Any target wounded by a Dire Sword can be killed outright by the spirit residing within the stone. The Phoenix Lord Asurmen carries the very first Dire Sword, the Sword of Asur. Okay, I don't care. Oh, actually I do care. It contains the soul of his brother Tethesis, who was killed by a demon. Alright, so a Dire Sword, as it says here, one-handed, single-edged power swords. What is a power sword? So a power sword is a power weapon that's been shaped into a sword. You know, I should have expected that when I clicked on it, but whatever. Designs crafted from any number of materials, though usually through adamantium. Poor Wolverine. Alas, I knew him. When the power cell's been activated, often by touching a control located on the hilt, the blade is then sheathed in a lethal corona of disruptive energy. This energy field allows the blade to carve through flesh, bone, and most forms of armor plate alike, making a power sword a highly effective close combat weapon. Power swords are used by all members of the Imperial Armed Forces, including the troops of the Astra Militarum and Space Marines of the Adeptus Astartes, as well as their Chaos counterparts among the Lost and the Damned and the Chaos Space Marines. Xenospecies such as the Craftworld Eldari and their evil kin the Drukari and the Necrons are also known to make use of such weapons. Let's go down to Operation. Often these signature weapons of elite warriors, power swords are perhaps the most dangerous of melee weapons in the galaxy. In the hands of a skilled swordsman, they combine a deadly offense with a nearly impenetrable defense. They often come in a variety of shapes and styles. Like all power weapons, a power sword projects a disruptive energy field along the blade, allowing it to slice armor with explosive impact. In theory, any weapon can be upgraded to be a power weapon given the necessary technology, though in practice, there is a traditional array in use by the Adeptus Astartes. Doesn't really tell us a whole lot about it. Just that basically a power weapon seems to render armor inert. It does say most forms of armor plate alike, but it doesn't tell us what actually resists it. So I wonder, we have... I think we have rules for that, actually. So, no. What was that rule? Not boost, I know that much. It's not injection, it's not automatic. Was it corrosive? I kind of wish that I had just like a glossary of just all of these effects that I could quickly reference. Penetrating is what it probably was. So a penetrating weapon is designed to punch through large objects' outer layers, making it easier to damage them. A penetrating weapon ignores an amount of hardness equal to the weapon's level. Okay. Okay, hold on. So a penetrating weapon ignores hardness. But I want to ignore armor. So here's what I think that we might do. The Dire Sword is a one-handed power sword. And it has two things that are very important. Number one, it is a power sword. So it is a power weapon. And it's a Vorpal weapon. It just dawned on me. It's a Vorpal weapon. I can't believe I'm doing this twice. But the Dire Sword, it says any target wounded by a Dire Sword can be killed outright by the spirit residing within the stone. When the blow is struck, the spirit in the sword will attempt to destroy the enemy's mind, potentially killing them instantly. This action is similar to the Imperial Nemesis force weapons used by Psykers like the Grey Knights. You can't see me right now, but I'm holding my head. Because this weapon is so overpowered. And it's one-handed. You could technically wield two of these. Okay. My little miniature panic attack is over. How the hell are we going to do this? I am not making this weapon Vorpal. It doesn't need to be Vorpal. I need a drink. I have water. I said I needed a drink. Alright. I need another page. Yes, the exasperation is Tuck says it sounds like a wisdom or intelligence save or die after crits. Oh no, 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 no. You didn't read what it said. Let's read it again, together. Any target wounded by a dire sword can be killed outright by the spirit residing within the spirit stone. Not on a crit, on every single wound. And it is not destroying them physically, so it's not vorpal. It is attacking the mind. Fortunately, though, we actually have something for this. I just gotta remember where it is. I think it's under afflictions. Curses? No. Here we go. Diseases. So, here's what I think we're gonna have to do. Tuck says, yes, but requiring saves after every attack is a bit crunchy. And Jeffrey says, so it's a one-shot weapon. Well, here's the thing. Tux, I agree with you. Requiring a save after every attack is a bit crunchy. That being said, though, this is not that uncommon, especially if you've ever played with a rogue player like myself, who particularly enjoys using poison weapons. See, for my part, I was actually able to argue with my DM once upon a time, which, by the way, no, I'm not allowing this. If anyone does it for me, it was a gross abuse of the rules, and I'm not apologizing. I used a bow, okay? I used a short bow, because I didn't need to be that far away, but I said, here's what I want to do. I can take 1 dose of poison, okay? And I can take 1 dose of poison, and I can use that to poison my dagger, according to the rules. So I can just apply the poison to my dagger and stab somebody. And now, not only are they wounded, but they have to make a save versus poison. I said, what if I had several doses of poison? And they're like, okay, you have several doses of poison. What if I poured them all into my quiver? And the DM said, you can't do that. And I said, why not? What's my quiver? Is my quiver made out of leather? Yeah. Is it more or less waterproof? Yeah. Could I hold water in my quiver if I wanted to go retrieve water? Yes. Then I can pour poison into my quiver. And if I pour poison into my quiver, where all of my arrows are sitting, are they now not all poisoned? And they said, I'm going to penalize the save, or I'm going to penalize the DC for it, but I'll allow it. And so I was able to carry an entire quiver of poisoned arrows. Point being that after every single hit that I got, we had to do a fortitude save. But it's actually really easy. As long as you know what your save DC is, it's just when you roll, or when a hit is made, you roll damage, I roll a save. Or vice versa, I roll damage, you roll a save at the same time. It doesn't have to take a whole lot of time to do it. It's just a matter of everybody needs to know what they're doing when they do it. For example, one of the rules at my table, because we do use Roll20, is you roll your attack and your damage at the same time. The reason being, if it's a hit, your damage is already rolled. If it's not a hit, I can ignore the damage roll. But we don't wait to say, did I hit? I will tell you if I will tell you if you hit or not. Just roll the damage as well with it. It saves time. So it will not be that much of a mess. It's not going to slow down the game that much. And Tuck says, I could see that being a good argument for potential infection. It would also be real expensive to fill a quiver like that. Well, here's the thing. A dose of poison isn't that much, yes. But if you pour it into the quiver, the idea is that at least the tips of all of your arrows are touching the poison, which is why I took a pretty significant penalty to the DC. So if the poison was normally like a DC 10, we're talking like a DC 5 now. Now, is it worth it? In my experience, yes. Is it much easier to succeed against the poison? It is. But now I get 20 poison attempts versus applying it to my dagger, which gets a 10 DC for only 1 attempt. It worked out in the end. The numbers worked. It was fantastic. I loved it. Also, there was a new rule made that was no longer allowed after that quiver. So I got 20 poison arrows, and that was it. So here's what I'm thinking. This is what I'm thinking. And Tuck says, poison is like the quantity of a drop or so. Actually, poison is usually a small vial. It's more than a drop. It's usually enough to coat like a dagger. Because you have to coat the entire thing. That way you can get it in there. A single drop is liable to be, stopped by armor. But I understand what you're saying, and poison would likely be absorbed by the leather. That's why I argued that it's waterproof, or at least water resistant. So it shouldn't be absorbed or not absorbed as fast. Fortunately, the DM did not argue that it would dry out. So, I mean, that was their fault. Anyway, back to the dire sword. Here's what I'm thinking. Every attack on the dire sword should have a DC, and every single time you get hit by this thing, you should have to roll, and if you roll, or if you fail the roll, you go up on this list. Now, there's 2 ways that we can handle this. Number 1, as the weapons grow in level and, damage, we can increase the DC for being hit on the mental disease track. Or, so on one hand, we can increase the DC. And I have to balance this somehow, so we have to do one or the other. On the one hand, increasing DC to resist. On the other hand, we increase the steps. That means that for the lowest level of dire sword, it is a dire sword, right? Yeah, dire sword. For the lowest level of dire sword, if you fail the save, you go up 1 step on the mental disease track. So you get hit by it once, / it's now latent. Okay? You get hit again by it, you fail the save, you're now weakened. So now you're shaken. But let's say you go all the way up to the top tier, which is not going in steps of 1, but steps of 4. So they hit you with it, you roll, you fail the save, you go 1, 2, 3, 4. So you get hit by this once, and you are now instantly befuddled. You begin losing your grasp on thought, reality, self, 50% chance each round to take no relevant actions, instead babbling randomly, wandering off, or talking to unseen parties. If you get hit again by it, 1, 2, 3, you are beyond dead after 2 hits. And I will admit, I do like that because more than likely the level or the top tier is going to be a level 20 sword. Being able to kill in 2 hits is incredible. And I think that I like the way that goes. So, I mean, what do you think? Should it be DC or should it be steps? I can go either way. But we're talking about essentially, on the one hand, guaranteeing that you always get hit by the mental disease track, or on the other hand, that a tier 20 dire sword is a 2-hit kill. What do you think? Let me know what you think here. Because up here, I'm going to put, this is going to be a mental attack. And I'm going to put down here, dire sword 1. We'll do 4 of those. There's that. Let's see. Capacity. Oh, it is a power sword. So we're going to do that. The bulk, it's just a one-handed power sword, so I'm thinking 1 bulk. Actually, how much bulk was that longsword? Syringe stick. That's basic melee weapons. 2-handed. Okay, here we go. Advanced. Where's that longsword? That longsword was 1 bulk. Tuck says, I think characters with high intelligence or wisdom should be allowed to use it to resist somehow. They can. They absolutely can. So any character with a high enough wisdom will automatically be able to resist this. I'm not sure how we're going to do this because it doesn't actually say what your save should be. So I think it's just going to be a general will save, which means that any character with a really good wisdom should be allowed to resist this. So it's going to be a will save. Which makes sense, because if you're going to be going up against the Eldar, you should already be expecting to go up against Psychers. Okay, and while we don't have the rules for Psychers yet, using the Immaterium and the powers of the Warp is purely an exercise in will anyway. And Eldar already have a huge boost to their will, just through their stats and the fact that they are Eldar and they're disciplined. Will is going to be really important when you're going up against Eldar. So there's going to be your resistance. The real question is, do we want to have the DC go up? So if we say that, like, the tier 1 dire sword has a DC of, say, 10, okay? So it's 10, and that's a 50% chance in your favor before we even add in your will save. So the odds are in your favor. Then we say Dire Sword 2 has a DC of 15. But I mean, let's consider, if this is a level 20 sword, 15, 10, If you're getting hit by this as a DC of 15, but you're level 10, then your will save is also probably a good 6 or 7. So the odds are still relatively in your favor. If this one was DC at 20, the odds are not in your favor. And then 25, you're basically guaranteed to get hit by it every time. But here's the thing. You're guaranteed, well, almost guaranteed, that every time you get hit by a level 20 or a tier 4 dire sword, you're going to be affected by it. However, because we increased the DC but not the steps, because I'm not going to do both, since the DC is so high, every time you get hit by this, you are moving on this disease track. So you have this like level 20 Eldar who comes in, swings the sword, you get hit, you roll, there's no chance of you overcoming this DC, and you automatically go one step up. And you're right, you should probably be allowed to resist it somehow. I mean, the flip side of this is, if you actually have one of these dire swords, do you want everybody to be resisting you? What I think should happen is that the more potent these swords get, the faster they move you up the disease track. Because a tier 1 would kill you in, we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7... 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, okay, 8. Okay, that includes healthy. So there's 7 steps on this. That means that a tier 1 sword will kill you in 7 hits. A tier 2 sword will kill you in 4. Tier 3 will kill you in 3. And a tier 4 sword will kill you in 2. Which I think is much more appropriate, and we can keep the DC lower. Maybe we can set that DC at about a 15, given that the lower ones that you'll see at the lower levels are so much will be so much slower to kill you, whereas the higher ones that are easier to resist relatively will be so much more lethal. And I think that's really the way to go. I really do think that's the way to go. So in terms of damage, this dimensional longsword does 14d8. What I think we can do is just copy this over here. Except, no, I'm not going to do that. Because this thing is also a power weapon. And we haven't even touched on that yet. So, damage, I'm going to go with... how do I want to do this? You know what? Forget it. I'm actually going to do this. They're different enough weapons that I'm not worried about it. We're going to copy that down. On critical, the longsword doesn't actually even have a crit effect. And perhaps this one shouldn't either, because the special abilities are just too damn strong. So, because it is a powered weapon, I'm going to delete that for a minute. It's a powered weapon. And I'm going to say that... Ooh, actually... Oh, I just thought of something brilliant. I thought of something brilliant. I love this. Okay, here's what we're going to do. The usage on this is going to be variable. And we're going to change the number of charges. So this is going to be 20 charges. 40 charges can stay. 60 charges. And 80 charges. Okay, here's how powered weapons are going to work. I just thought of this. It's brilliant. I love it. So, power weapons will gain ignore armor and ignore hardness equal to the number of charges used. So, if you want to use this power weapon, you have 20 charges on a first tier dire sword. That means that if you want to make sure that you absolutely kill something, you can turn this thing all the way up, use all the charges in the battery, and absolutely smite something. However, you could also use this thing sparingly, using one charge at a time, giving you an ignore 1 armor and ignore 1 hardness. And you can do that for 20 swings. I like this. I think this is a great idea, actually. It means that you can get one really big swing out of it, or you can get a whole bunch of relatively moderated swings. And if you're carrying extra batteries on you, then that's great. You can go ahead and say, you know what? I'm going to use up 5 charges every swing. So you use 5 charges, you swing, the charges are gone. That's all right. After 4 more swings, your battery's empty, drop it on the ground, slap in a new one, keep going. I think this would be a good rule for power weapons going forward. So this is going to be a powered weapon. It is a power weapon. And it is a mental attack weapon, which we have to write the rules for right now. So I'm actually going to go right here and just say mental attack. On wound. And it's specifically on wound. It's going to be a will save, or a will DC, and I'm going to say 15 for now. A will save, or DC 15 on fail. Advance on mental disease track equal to dire sword tier. So a tier 1 will advance you 1 at a time, tier 2 will advance you 2 at a time, and so on. And I am just going to go ahead and say it. That is a level 20. Like, there is no way you are getting you're able to use a tier 4 dire sword at anything less than level 20. I'm sorry, but that is a god tier weapon there. I mean, especially if you can get things like multi-attack. And I don't know how an Eldar would get multi-attack, but if they could hit you twice in one turn with it, they would literally be able to one-hit or one-shot anything alive. So, just wow. I did say at the very beginning of the stream, the Eldar are crazy. Like, their race is already just better than everyone else. I mean, they're immortal. They're stronger than you. They're faster than you. They're smarter than you. They're prettier than you. And now we get into their actual weapons, which can literally just destroy your mind by touching you. So, we are out of time for today, but what's the next one? The Executioner. The Executioner is a large, two-handed power glaive, available only to the Howling Banshee Exarchs, which is capable of slicing an opponent in half with a single blow. So, Jeffrey says, overpowered. They are so overpowered. JP says, what is their rarity? Now that's the key. Okay? Dire swords. What's the rarity in a dire sword? Let's think about this. First off, what's the rarity of an Eldar? The Eldar are a dying race. Okay? Half of the Eldar are now Drukhari living in the Immaterium or some planet that is steeped in chaos. So already, half of the Eldar are off the table. That leaves you with the Craftworld Eldar and their giant Craftworld ships. What are the odds that you come across an Eldar anywhere? So, I mean, that's the first step to your rarity. Secondly, let's back up from this thing again. Secondly, these things are only wielded by Exarchs of the Dire Avengers aspect. I don't know what an Exarch is. A former Craftworld Eldari or Ascianari aspect warrior who lost themselves upon the path of the warrior and is unable to ever leave it again. At this point, they are considered to have abandoned the Ascianari path with its promise of new experiences and development of new skills in favor of a constant life of bloodshed. An Ascianari becomes the elite warrior called an Exarch. Simultaneously, an Exarch is a priest of the Kala Mensha Kane, the Eldari god of war, as well as its caretaker of the individual warrior shrine, and a trainer, teacher, and instructor for other aspect warriors. So, I mean, there's a lot there. So we're talking, not only do you have to be an Eldar, not only do you have to be on the path of the warrior to begin with, but you have to dedicate that self to you to the point where you basically cast off everything else. You are now exclusively a warrior. There's not too many of these people is what I'm saying. And then, how many of these actual swords are there? Now, interestingly, that may be the one thing in your benefit. Because here's the thing. The Eldar are probably the only race capable of forging power swords, or power weapons in general. The Imperium can't. The Mechanicus basically sees them as heresy, because this is technology so far above everybody else that it may as well be Xeno in origin. So we use power swords and power weapons, we maintain them, but we don't make them. That means that the only power swords or power weapons we have are the ones that we have. The same thing is probably true with Chaos too, although maybe Chaos is capable of actually forging them since they don't care about heresy and blasphemy. The orcs can make power weapons. The thing is about orc weapons is like orc technology in general, even they don't know how they did it. They just know they did. So the Eldar are probably the only ones who can make these. And like actually legitimately make them. But then you get to the other part. The Spirit Stone. As I learned when I was researching the Spirit Stones, is where is it? I know it's in here somewhere. Here we go. In times of dire need, the Ascianari are also able to retrieve the spirit stones of the long-dead Ascianari heroes and place them in artificial bodies of the Wraithguard and Wraithlord constructs. These Wraithbone constructs are piloted by the Why can I not say the damn word? Asuryani soul, which experiences reality in this form as a dream. The process is considered little better than necromancy in Eldari culture and is only done as a last resort. I can only imagine that taking a spirit stone and slapping it in your sword is no better. So, how rare are these things? Finding a dire sword might actually be easier than you think. Finding a dire sword with a spirit crystal in it, or a spirit stone, that might be the hard part. Because in order for this thing to function as we've done, you gotta have the sword, you gotta have a battery to put in it to power the sword, and then you gotta have a spirit stone to put in the sword. And that last one, like, how do you get your hands on a spirit stone? There's only one of two ways. Number one, you gotta kill yourself an Eldar, okay? And hope that it doesn't have friends, because its friends are going to fight to the death for that spirit stone. Because every spirit stone is not just precious, they are holy. So you're gonna have to like massacre a whole bunch of Eldar to even get the stone. Or you're going to have to somehow find a craft world, somehow break into a craft world, and then try to steal one from the Infinity Circuit. So, how rare are these swords? Even if you found one, it's probably not going to work. That being said, though, I mean, let's run a scenario here. What if we make a team, okay? And we have one person who is playing... Well, one person has to be playing an Imperial Guard. Or something of that matter, because technically speaking, if we play according to Rogue Trader rules, only a human is allowed to be a Rogue Trader. So, we will need to have a human on board somewhere. Or it'll have to be some kind of NPC, I'm not sure. Maybe if nobody wants to play a human, you guys will end up playing like some kind of Rogue Trader strike squad. I don't know. And instead of taking orders from an Inquisitor, you'll simply take orders from your captain. Either way though, if say we've got like a human and a Skitari and a Tau and an Eldar. Okay? So you got 4 people there, all 4 different races. And the Eldar player dies. Well, every Eldar has a Spirit Stone by default. Okay? Because that's what I learned about it. Everybody has these things. These things are not rare. So, also known as the Waystone, Dreamstone, Soulstone, Tear of Isha. It is a small, seemingly precious gem carried in a variety of aesthetically pleasing settings on an Eldari's chest, used to save their souls from consumption after death by the Immaterium, or in the Materium by Slanesh. Every Asuryani of the craft worlds wears a shining gem or polished stone upon their breast. Okay, they are beyond common. They have extras. So, if you choose to play as an Eldar, you will get a Spirit Stone. Just by default. So, if your Eldar character were to die, you will be locked inside of that Spirit Stone. Now, what happens to that Spirit Stone afterwards is up for debate, because if they keep your Spirit Stone, okay? They've got your Spirit Stone, they put it in a box, they put it away somewhere, your character is saved right there. One of 2 things so far, and I mean, we're not done yet, but one of 2 things so far could happen. Number 1, they either find, buy, or build somehow, I don't know how you'd build one, what do they call it, a Wraithbone? Where was it? It was somewhere in here. Yeah, here we go. A Wraith Lord. So they find or somehow build this Wraith Lord. And so once they've got this, they take your stone. They put your stone inside of this body. And now your character is back. The only difference is now, instead of you being an Eldar, you are this giant Wraithbone construct. However, you can't fit through doors anymore, but you can still talk, you can still think, you can still go on missions with people. Again, you don't fit through doors, but you can also literally tear through a wall with your bare hands. So that's one option. The other option is that, much like the example given when we looked at the swords, this Phoenix Lord Osurmen, he carries the very first dire sword ever crafted, the Sword of Asur. It contains the soul of his brother Tethesis, who was slain by a demon, which allows the ancient Eldari hero to continue to fight against the greatest enemies of his people. So if you happen to find one of these dire swords, and your fellow player who had an Eldar and then died, they have a Spirit Stone right there, you could put their soul in your sword and continue on that way. There's a lot of different ways this could play out, to the point where I cannot even begin to speculate as to how things are going to happen. But it's going to be one of those, it's going to be a matter of point. Like, if you guys want to go looking, if you want to go looking for a dire sword, I can make it happen. Because the way my games work is I will cater it to you. I will draw up a campaign, but if you just say, you know what, that's stupid, I want to go look for this thing over here, we can do that. It's not going to hurt my feelings at all. I'm here to play. I don't care what we're playing. So if you guys go, like, if you land on a planet somewhere and you go digging for information about, you know, an Eldari dire sword, even though you're supposed to be looking for an STC, I will, depending on, you know, what your diplomacy checks are, I will give you the information you're looking for, and you can go. Now, granted, you're also now AWOL. You're disobeying orders. So, it's going to be on you guys to figure out how you're going to square that with the captain. Unless one of you is the captain. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But you're going to be free to do whatever you want. So, should it... JP says, should it be a mythical blade or legendary weapon? They kinda all are. I mean, think about it. Because you have to integrate a spirit stone into it, every sword is different. I'm reminded of RimWorld. Because in RimWorld, as of the, which one was it? I should remember this. I play RimWorld all the time. But the first DLC. The Royalty DLC, that was it. Which introduced the Empire to RimWorld. One of the things they also introduced was persona weapons. So in RimWorld, you have AIs. And your highest tier AIs are like super complicated, almost living AGIs. Which, if you're not familiar with the term, an AGI is an artificial general intelligence. Okay? It's basically an artificial human brain or better. However, there are lower levels of AI that just do it like a single purpose. And the way that persona weapons in RimWorld works is once you pick it up, number one, it bonds with you. And so only you're allowed to wield it. And number two, every persona weapon is different. They all have different personalities, which help them to be better at different things. Some are hyper-aggressive, some are super defensive, and some are just not interested in helping you at all. The spirit stone that goes into your sword is going to be unique. Now, whether we mechanically make that happen or not, I don't know. We could. We could say that whatever spirit you put in there, maybe it'll grant that sword different abilities. Maybe it'll allow you to use different combat feats that you didn't know before. Maybe if the spirit inside has a higher, say, dexterity than yours, maybe it gives you finesse. I don't know. We'll have to work on that. There's a lot of potential here. And yes, that would make them pretty mystical or legendary. I don't know. There's potential, is what I'm saying. There's a lot of potential there. And I look forward to it, honestly, because this is fun. This is fun for me. I like going through all these different possibilities and making it work. Because we come up with some swords, or some weapons, some tools, some armors, that are just like, nobody who made Starfinder originally would have even dreamed of this. And now it's in here. I mean, that's just crazy. Like the Eldar. The Eldar are crazy too. And Jeffrey says, it works. This is in reference to the orcs making stuff. The firing pin is in the ammo, yet it still shoots as if it isn't thrown together. Orc magic is if they think it works. If they think it works, it works. Yes, that is orc technology as a whole. Orc technology literally functions on the power of belief. And we love them for it. Okay, well, we didn't get nearly as far as I wanted to last time. That's mostly my fault, because I spent a half an hour going over all the mistakes I made last time. And then we spent way too long on some things like the Dire Sword. It's okay, though. The next weapon on the list was the Executioner. That seems to just be a power weapon and a glaive, so that should be super simple. It'll just be, you know, it's a power weapon with reach. Sounds great. However, the weapon after that is something called the Harlequin's Kiss. And I'm just going to read this to you before we get out of here. The Harlequin's Kiss is one of the most horrifying close combat weapons employed by the Eldar and is used only by the Harlequins. It is a sharpened tube containing monofilament wire like those used in the Death Spinners, and it is worn on the forearm. The tube is punched into the target and the wire uncoiled, ripping the victim's innards apart in spectacular and bloody fashion. Now, I don't know exactly what that means, but what I'm picturing in my head is being punched in the gut with a spike, which then unfolds into a lawn trimmer and begins to trim your spleen. How in God's name do I even begin to write rules for that? I don't know. Technically speaking, any attack by that weapon should be a lethal attack. So, we'll get there when we get there. It's all I can say. Otherwise, though, I'm going to wrap this up because we've been going too long as it is. Just as a reminder, if you do come to the Saturday lectures, there is not one next week because I will be busy, so I will not be here. Next week, or next Sunday, however, will be the tabletop stream, so we will be doing that. It's going to be fun. We're going to find out just how many more of these weapons can absolutely break my brain. And with the Eldar, they're doing a good job of it because this stuff is... Their weaponry defies all reason. Not logic. Logically, I get how it works. But reasonably, why? Just why? Why would you have these things? We made a sword that rips people's minds out of their brain. Why? I made a spike that if you stab into somebody, it blends all of their internal organs until it comes pouring out of their skin. Why? Why would you do that? Ladies and gentlemen, the Eldar. They're better than you in so many ways. Okay, I'm getting out of here. I'm serious. I said it before, I'm saying it again, I'm leaving. If you want to be here to find out just how much more insane the Eldar can get, then subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, that way you get notified. All I'm saying is, next time, bring a poncho. You're in the splash zone. If you know somebody else who either loves 40K, loves tabletop games, or, given the subject that we're currently on, if they just love gratuitous gore, like if you've got a friend who loves the Saw movies, they're gonna love the Harlequins. So share this video with them, and bring them back next week. Otherwise, though, if you don't do that, at least do me the favor of leaving a like on the video, leave comments down below, or even better, come join on the Discord server. That way, we can talk there, and you can join the game where you too can get a Harlequin's Kiss and turn somebody's insides into a giant blender. If that's your thing, join the Discord. And otherwise, if you don't want to do any of that, hopefully I will see you back here next week. Thank you all for coming out today, and take care.